Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel. In this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the conflict on the territory of Ukraine, where during the previous night, between the 5th and the 6th of July of 2026, the Russians carried out a massive attack, and the Russians were attacking the city of Kyiv, mainly the city of Kyiv. And in this video we can see how exactly the Russians were attacking the Kyiv overnight. We can see lots of explosions, lots of missiles that the Russians were using, and we can see lots of failed attempts from the Ukrainian side to intercept these missiles. The Minister of Defense of Ukraine this morning clarified that during the night the Russians used 419 air vehicles, including 68 missiles and 351 drones to attack the territory of Ukraine. And furthermore, the Ukrainians reported that during the overnight attack they haven't managed to intercept even a single ballistic missile of the Iskander type and of the Zircon type, which means that currently the Ukrainians have huge problems with interceptors. And of course, during the night we received lots of videos on this matter. For example, in this video we can see not just an explosion somewhere in the territory of the city of Kyiv, but we can also see the secondary detonation. So there were lots of videos about the secondary detonations, which means that the Russians, as a result of the overnight attack, managed to hit some warehouses or ammo depots. Maybe the Russians managed to destroy warehouses with interceptors. Furthermore, according to information we have, the Russians hit lots of military facilities. This morning, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation provided a list of military facilities that were attacked by Russians. And furthermore, this morning, this information about military facilities that were attacked by Russians were confirmed by satellite pictures, where we might see something like fire anomalies. Lots of fire anomalies were recorded through the city of Kyiv. And when talking about this zoom, we see this icon of a fire, and as you can see, just from this angle, at least 5 fire anomalies were recorded through the city of Kyiv. 2 of them are located in the southwestern parts of the city. We're talking about these 2 fire anomalies, and 3 fire anomalies were recorded through the northern and the northwestern parts of the city of Kyiv. Once again, the Russians were trying to hit objects of military facilities that the Ukrainians were using, and military enterprises that the Ukrainians were using, first of all, to produce drones, long-range weapons, mid-range weapons, and many other different things for the military purposes. In this video we can see a warehouse that was destroyed by Russians as a result of the overnight attack, and a big fire broke out right after the Russians attacked the territory. The most important area that was attacked by Russians is the former enterprise of Vuhledar, so this territory. We have a fire anomaly in this area, a very big one, and we have lots of videos from these territories, and the sources reported that the local authorities were forced to announce a mandatory evacuation. The sources reported that up to 1,500 civilians were evacuated from several districts of the city of Kyiv due to secondary detonations. Once again, the Russians managed to destroy some weapon facilities, ammo depots, and secondary detonations were recorded. So that is why the Ukrainian authorities and the Kyiv authorities were forced to announce this mandatory evacuation from several parts of the city of Kyiv. Furthermore, the Russians attacked the southern parts of the city of Kyiv, and as we can see, according to this satellite picture, we can see that this facility was destroyed, and here we have lots of trucks on this territory. We don't have pictures from this area, we just have a fire anomaly that confirms that this territory was hit during the overnight attack, and most likely, according to the Russian intelligence information, the Ukrainians were using these territories probably for drones and for trucks that were carrying drones deep inside of the eastern parts of Ukraine with the purpose to attack the territory of Russia. Now let's talk about the pattern of attack. So this morning, pro-Ukrainian and pro-Russian sources published lots of pictures on the matter of the overnight attack, and here we have the approximate routes of drones and missiles that were attacking the territory of Ukraine. As you can see, the major number of roads are moving in the direction of the city of Kyiv. We have blue lines, we have yellow lines, we have red lines, orange lines, which means that the Russians were using all type of weapons they have. The sources reported that the Russians were using dozens of Iskander M ballistic missiles, and once again, according to the Ministry of Defense, the Ukrainians haven't managed to intercept even a single Iskander M ballistic missile. Furthermore, the Russians used around 10 hypersonic Zircon missiles. The Ukrainians haven't managed to intercept them as well, and the Russians used dozens of Ha-101 cruise missiles, and the Ukrainians managed to bring down up to a dozen of them. And as you can see, according to this picture, the Russians used the same pattern, the same tactics, the same signature of attack as we used to see several days ago. I would like to remind you that the previous massive, or more precisely the mega attack, the last mega attack, took place between the 1st and the 2nd of July of 2026, which means almost 4 days ago, and during the previous mega attack we saw almost the same picture. So this is the picture of attack between the 1st and the 2nd of July of 2026, and as you can see, this pattern has lots of common, lots of same things that we can see during the previous overnight attack. Furthermore, I would like to remind you that the previous massive attack took place between the 14th and the 15th of June of 2026, and here we have the same pattern of attack. The Russians were using lots of missiles and drones just to attack the territory of the city of Kyiv. Probably there is just one difference between the attack of the 15th of June, between the 2nd of July and the 7th and the 6th of July, is that the Russians during the attack between the 14th and the 15th of June of 2026 were also attacking the city of Kyiv with Zircon hypersonic missiles launched from Crimea. So after this attack, the Russians stopped doing this, and now the Russians use only the Kursk region to attack the territory of Ukraine with Zircon hypersonic missiles. So another important detail is that the Russians had a pause between the 15th of June attack and the 2nd of July attack that last more than 2 weeks. So which means that the Russians during the previous pause managed to concentrate and to accumulate a lot of missiles and drones for the next attacks, which means that these July attacks carried out by Russians were planned by the Russians a long time ago. And as you can see, we have a very small gap between the 2nd of July attack and the 6th of July attack, just 4 days. Furthermore, pro-Ukrainian sources reported that the Russians are ready to attack once again the territory of Ukraine even this upcoming night. So which means that most likely during the NATO summit that is going to take place between the 7th and the 8th of July of 2026, there are very high chances that the Russians would once again attack the territory of Ukraine with dozens of missiles and hundreds of drones, but most likely everything depends on the results of negotiations between Putin, Trump and Zelensky. I would like to remind you that the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, is going to have a meeting with the President of the United States of America during the NATO summit in Ankara. Then, according to information we have, the President of the United States of America will have a call with the President of the Russian Federation, and most likely, depending on the results of these talks, of these trilateral talks, the Russians will decide whether to attack the city of Kyiv during this NATO summit or not. So this is a very important situation, and once again, most likely Zelensky would try to convince the President of the United States of America to allow the Ukrainians to hold elections during autumn of 2026 at the same time with the Russian elections, with the Russian parliament elections. So as we discussed during the previous videos, the Ukrainians, Zelensky wants to receive legitimacy in front of Russians and to have the right and the possibilities to write any agreement between the Russian Federation and Ukraine if a peaceful settlement of the conflict comes. Now let's move further and let's discuss more strikes that were carried out by Russians that are not related to the massive attack that took place during the previous night. The Russians, during the previous 24 hours, continued attacking gas stations and objects of energy infrastructure through the territory of Ukraine, and lots of gas stations destroyed were recorded. First, let's talk about the southern regions. As you can see, we have lots of icons, and according to information we have, the Russians destroyed few more gas stations along M14 road between the cities of Nikolaev and Odessa, and we have a lot of videos on this matter. According to information we have, this gas station was destroyed, and in this video we can see civilians moving through this territory and filming the gas station that was destroyed during the overnight attack. Another gas station was destroyed a bit further in the eastern direction, a gas station in the area of the settlement of Mirny. Here we can see the consequences of attack, and we see that the logistics between Odessa and the mainland continue collapsing. Furthermore, the Russians destroyed a gas station along N24 roads in the northern direction. This time the gas station was destroyed on the territory of the city by the name of Nova Odessa. In this video we can see an explosion that took place on the territory of this gas station right after the Russians attacked this territory. Moving further, the area between Dnipro, Zaporozhye and Petykhatki. As for this territory, the sources reported that during the night the Russians were attacking objects of energy infrastructure, the Russians were attacking the logistics, and a very big list of enterprises was published by Russians on this matter. The territory between the cities of Dnipro and Kharkiv, and this time another gas station destruction was recorded. Here we have satellite pictures, and here we can see the changes between the dates after the Russians attacked gas stations along M29 road. So as a result of attack, some artifacts appeared on the territory of gas station, which means that the gas station, most likely this gas station, was completely destroyed. The city of Pavlograd, another parking site, was destroyed. We discussed the situation yesterday, but today pro-Ukrainian sources published additional videos on this matter. Here we have lots of trucks that were destroyed by Russians as a result of attack with a drone, as a result of attacks. So here we have lots of trucks on this satellite picture. So as you can see, the Russians right now try to destroy parking sites not just along the line of combat contact, but the Russians, for the first time probably since the beginning of the special military operation, attacked a parking site and a service center where we can see lots of trucks and through the city of Kyiv, which is a very important situation, which means that the Russians shift their focus further from the line of combat contact deep inside of the territory of Ukraine, and now we start receiving first signals and first signs that the Russians right now began attacking and destroying logistics, gas stations, parking sites, service centers, trucks and so on through the central part of Ukraine, which is a very bad situation for the Ukrainians, and this situation can force the Ukrainians to move their launching sites in the direction of the western parts of Ukraine, and from these positions the Ukrainians would not be able to attack anything. For example, during the previous 24 hours, during the previous nights, the Ukrainians also made an attempt to attack deep inside of the territory of the Russian Federation. The Ukrainians were using hundreds of drones for these purposes. Pro-Ukrainian sources reported that the Ukrainians used 310 drones to attack deep inside of the territory of Russia, but the Russians reported that they managed to intercept everything. The Russians stated that during the previous 24 hours, around 700 drones were destroyed by Russians. This is a very big number, and as of the morning of the 6th of July of 2026, we haven't received anything on the matter of explosions or damages that the Ukrainians managed to deal. So as you can see, the Ukrainians launched almost 700 of drones, and they haven't managed to get any result of this attack. the Sumy direction, another gas station was destroyed along N07 road, and this video was published this morning, and here we have a video where we can see the consequences of attack. The gas station was completely destroyed. So hundreds of gas stations have been destroyed by Russians since April of 2026, and it seems that currently we're facing a turning point in the special military operation. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. During the previous 12 hours, lots of very interesting changes were recorded. First, let's talk about the northern parts of Sumy region. As a result of offensive operation, the Russians improved their positions around the settlement of Bachevsk, and these are the changes on the ground between the dates. Just let's wait a bit when data loaded. So this is, for example, the morning of the 6th of July. The Russians improved their positions through the village of Bachevsk itself, and the Russians left the settlement of Bachevsk and answered the settlement of Tovstadubova. So the Russians continue offensive operation in the Glukhov direction, and we have small changes also in the area of the settlement of Komarevka. Pro-Ukrainian sources published this video where we can see how Ukrainians using drones were attacking Russians through the most northeastern parts of Sumy region. Now let's move further. The Kharkiv direction. During the previous nights, attack was recorded in the area of the village of Bezruki. In this video, we can see a facility that was attacked by Russians. As a result of attack, this building that was used by the Ukrainians as a temporary deployment point was damaged and destroyed. The northeastern part of the Kharkiv region. During the previous 12 hours, additional changes were recorded around the settlement of Bely Kolodez. We see that the Russian offensive operation in this area is gaining a momentum, and these are the changes on the ground between the dates, between the previous 4 days. It seems that the defenses of the armed forces of Ukraine in this area collapsed completely. The Ukrainians right now are trying to hold their lines around the settlement of Bely Kolodez, but according to these changes, we see that significant number of Russian troops approach the city of Bely Kolodez from the west, from the northwest, from the north, and from the northeast. It seems that, according to the pace of this offensive operation, the Ukrainians sooner or later would be forced to fall back from this area. The city of Kupyansk, additional changes were recorded through the city as well, and this is the changes on the ground. This is the end of the 5th of July, and this is the beginning of the 6th of July. The Russians once again managed to improve their positions through the northern parts of the settlement, and these days we have changes in this area. Almost every single 2 or 3 days we receive receive changes on the ground, and here we have these changes between the dates. We see that the Russians very slowly but step by step are moving further in the direction of the river Voskol itself, and sometimes the Russians improve their positions even on the Ukraine side of the river Voskol. Moving further, now let's discuss the situation in the area of the city of Kostiantynivka. As we discussed, the Russians yesterday proposed the Kostiantynivka ceasefire just with the purpose to allow the Ukrainians to evacuate the bodies of fallen soldiers. The Russians reported that there are 13.5 thousand bodies of fallen soldiers of the armed forces of Ukraine, and the Russians proposed the Ukrainians to evacuate the bodies. But according to information we have, Ukraine has refused to retrieve the bodies of 13,500 fallen Ukrainian servicemen, and this was stated by the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, of the Russian Federation. And furthermore, this morning, right before the beginning of the NATO summit, pro-Ukrainian sources published a video with Ukrainian soldiers across the city of Kostiantynivka. As of the morning of the 6th of July of 2026, 2 flags were we were able to geolocate. One of them took place in the area of the central part of Kostiantynivka, the second one in the northern part. As of now, it's very difficult to say what exactly we can see through this video, but this is exactly most likely what we were talking about yesterday. There are still dozens of pockets of resistance through the city of Kostiantynivka, and the Ukrainians would use these pockets of resistance just with one purpose, to show videos during the NATO summit that the city of Kostiantynivka is under complete Ukraine control, and when the NATO summit ends, the Ukrainians most likely will try to evacuate their soldiers from the city. So most likely this is the situation, and this is the reason why the Russians were trying to propose the Ukrainians the fallen body evacuation, because the Russians were giving a chance to these soldiers under the protection of the evacuation of falling bodies to leave the city of Kostiantynivka, but the Ukrainians rejected this idea. As for the Zaporozhye direction, during the previous 12 hours, lots of explosions were recorded through the city of Orechov through its southern part. In this video, we can see how the Russians were basically reducing the Orechov citadel of the southern parts of the city, and I would like to remind you that according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, currently there are very heavy clashes for the city of Orechov, and the Russians control up to 30% of the city. And that's it for the short video of the Military Summary channel. Reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.